Okay, question. Are you familiar with the monkey's paw? The monkey's paw is that fictional object that holds immense power. It is capable of fulfilling one's deepest and darkest desires, but usually never in the way that one hoped. And there is a cost. Are you still with me? Here's why I'm telling you this. This afternoon, Republicans are starting to reckon with the consequences of the wish that they made when they wished on a monkey's paw and hitched their wagon to guess who? Donald Trump. The New York Times is reporting, quote, Trump has been the most potent force in Republican primary elections, elevating allies and foiling foes with endorsements, social media posts, and rally appearances. But as the end of the primary season draws near and the sprint to the general election begins, Mr. Trump may soon be something entirely different for Republican candidates. A liability. A liability. That is because general election voters, specifically swing voters, have had it by and large up to here. Is it here, maybe? With the man that many of them see as having committed two unforgivable sins in as many years. The first one is the multi-pronged trade war, most recently with Canada. With Canada. Republican candidates in state after state after state have some answering to do. Like in Michigan, a hotly contested battleground state. Politico is now reporting the auto industry could face an existential crisis if things don't cool down there. Check this out. This is what they say. The stakes are clear. Take Ford's F-Series Super Duty truck made in a new plant in Windsor, Ontario. Its transmission comes from Ohio. Its axles come from Michigan. Its engine comes from Ontario. Or in Iowa. What about Iowa? Another battleground where the Washington Post reports just today that the cost of fertilizer and fuel and machinery are all up just as wheat crop prices have made it ever so harder to cover those rising expenses. This is a quote. I am afraid that we're looking into the barrel of another farm crisis, said Wendy Johnson, a fourth-generation farmer who estimates her profits are down by as much as 50%. Of course, some of that goes back to the second of those two unforgivable sins I was talking about earlier, the war that Donald Trump started with Iran. In terms of midterm strategy making, The Atlantic reports today that for the White House, it might come down to the political equivalent of crossing your fingers, just hoping people move on. Quote, part of the plan, Trump advisors and allies tell us, is to try to push Iran to the background while hoping that gas prices come down even a little and that Republicans can shift the nation's focus to more politically palatable topics ahead of the midterms. These are the consequences for Republican candidates still clutching that monkey's paw. The political figure who enabled full control over the federal government just 2 years ago might very well be the reason that they lose it in just 68 days. But hey, who's counting? And that is where we begin today. Chief Washington correspondent and host for Midas Touch, Scott MacFarlane, is here. Also joining us, my colleague and friend, MS Now senior political analyst, host of the Runaway Country podcast, and author of the Substack, How the Hell, Alex Wagner, and the managing editor at The Bulwark, contributor Sam Stein, is here too. Good to see everybody. Scott MacFarlane, let's start with you. What is your sense? Mine is that the Republican candidates sure do recognize this monkey paw nature of the gamble that they have made on Donald Trump at this point.
Few different takeaways. First of all, clutch move on the monkey's paw. Really strong pull, Jacob. You can't teach that. You just got to have that, man. Nicely done. Spoke with the mayor of Brampton, Ontario, a guy named Patrick Brown, who says they're in this for the long haul, that there's a political imperative on Canadian leaders to fight this fight, that there's a certain mandate from the public, no matter the short-term or long-term economic pain, for Canadians to push back. So Republicans are now in this thing, too, for the long haul. A couple states jump out at me as unique concerns for the party from what I'm hearing on Capitol Hill today. Iowa has unique impact on farmers from this. These are farming supplies. These are dairy and agricultural supplies that are going to cost more. They're already in the mess because of Iran. There are three Republican-held U.S. House seats in Iowa that Democrats are keen on flipping. You mentioned Michigan, but I'll also push over to competitive races that could be forming in Pennsylvania and in other states where ag faces huge hurdles from all this.
So many. And also in Maine. I was in Maine just over the course of the last week or so, and it's not just in Aroostook County in the northern part, the more rural part, but the symbiotic nature of the relationship with Canada it is just outrageous and mind-blowing that they don't see how punishing this is to themselves. Sam Stein, I do want to listen to what Mr. Trump, what the president told Trey Gowdy of Fox News, and then I want to talk about it with you. Let's watch.
There's a theory that I get the vote. You know, I see it all the time, that when Trump's on the ballot, they win. When he's not on the ballot, the people don't go to vote. And I'm asking the people through your brilliant show, #1 show, I'm asking the people to get out and vote, pretend I'm on the ballot. If they go out and vote, we're going to win. And if we don't, our country's going to be in sad shape, because we're going to go through a lot of things.
Pretend I'm on the ballot is the most insane political strategy I think he could possibly come up with at this point.
Well, he's not wrong in one sense. I'll just make the case that he's right that when he is on the ballot, his people come out, and his people are sort of atypical voters, right? Like they don't. This was his sort of
low
superpower
propensity
in 2016.
voters is what they say. Yeah, exactly.
It's not just low propensity. It's people who have not really ever engaged politically before, but they were attracted to the idea of a make believe businessman winning the Oval Office and turning the country around and solving inflation in one day, right? So the Republicans kind of do need that. But the other side of that coin is that his across the board, I mean, even the strong suits, he's incredibly unpopular right now, and there's very little for him to campaign on. And we talked. It used to be that at least he had, for instance, immigration. You've covered this as well as anyone, Jacob. But even now on issues of border security, it's a 50-50 issue at best for him, and he shut down the border more or less. And so there's not much to campaign on. And the concept that you should campaign as if you were on the ballot, but he's also not on the ballot, is probably the worst of both worlds, because he's not going to be someone you can vote for, but he's also making himself the central character in the election.
And not just that, in this midterm convention, which, Alex, you and I have been to many conventions together, but the idea of a midterm convention that is centered around Donald Trump is, I think it's a little cuckoo.
I don't know, man. If you're running in a midterm race, if you're Susan Collins or John Husted or Mike Rogers, and you are watching this guy in the Oval Office, you're from a state like Michigan where Canada buys 39% of your exports, or Iowa, where they do $5 billion worth of trade with Canada, or Maine, where Canada buys 41% of your exports. Susan Collins, she has a convenient place in the Senate Republican conference insofar as she can actually say this is a bad idea, Trump, and certainly has been saying it vociferously. So that doesn't, I think, distinguish her in any sense, just because it's her general tack as she's trying to win a tough re-election battle.
So
but she's
concerned.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a disaster for Republican candidates in the key races that are going to decide who runs Congress after November.